As we've got in the bottom right corner of the map, the red Zerg player from ENS Esports. It is, of course, Serral. He is taking on Team Liquid's very own uThermal in the top left-hand side of Lightshades. uThermal from Team Liquid playing in the TSL qualifier. Of course, we're expecting and hoping some Team Liquid players will qualify into this event. Obviously, we're looking mostly eyes on Clem. But, you know, Hearthstone, uThermal can have a good run, and Mana as well can have a good run and qualify too. Maybe not in week 1, but maybe in week 2. Obviously, next week we have TSL qualifiers again, round 2. Fight! It's going to happen again next week, so TSL qualifiers for the next 2 weekends, which is always a lot of fun as well. So exciting times as we get underway, we get things started. Just wait to see what the plan might be here for a little while. Now, it is pool first from Serral, so potential to be aggressive, potential to get into, you know, a bit of a spicy situation earlier in the game than usual. This Reaper's about halfway done. Command Center coming up on the natural. uThermal is going to SCV Scout, and that's good news, because then you know about the pool first. So then you know to maybe be a little bit more careful with this Reaper, maybe keep that at home instead of bringing it across the map. And that just allows you to defend against the initial Zerglings with a little bit of ease. With the factory building. I mean, it's pretty typical from uThermal, right? The Reaper is going to go across. uThermal didn't believe there was actually Lings moving out. Now, 4 of them do go around the bottom side. With a Marine out and going into a second, he actually should be able to deal with that anyway. So yeah, he made the conscious decision to say, okay, pull first, but I'm still going to send my Reaper over here. Right now, I'm just going to leave that on the natural and try and stop drones from mining from this location. It's the first grenade that forced the drones back. Of course, they are near, you know, extractors they can build, spores they can build to keep themselves alive and safe. So for the moment, no drone losses. It's now the Lings with the drones trying to get surrounded in. uThermal does dodge around that one quite aptly. As these 4 Lings not going to do much, and uThermal just going to go straight to 3 command centers. Obviously, the Reaper getting a full scout around that main base is the benefit of this situation here, where you're able to say, right, I'm not actually too worried about what's currently ongoing. Just able to kind of make my way through and just handle that nice and easily. Does lose the mule, though, with the Ling speed kicking in. So that's what Serral was waiting for. And a few more Lings showing up, chasing that Reaper down, too. So uThermal's going to have to go and clean this up. And once again, Serral is just so good at finding these little sneaky ways to deal damage. Alright, well, we do see the cleanup in the main. The other few Lings going to pull it back, but always nice again. You can see what he's done here. He didn't actually lose a unit, just a mule. He does have a bit of an income drop towards Serral's favor now as he drones up that natural expansion, of course. uThermal had to pull a few workers. In general, this is the point where Zerg is going to start overtaking the economy anyway. As uThermal will start a Banshee now. Are we going to have Cloak with this Banshee once the gas is there? Or is this very much so just a, I'm a little afraid of the fact you open pool first, and that gives you the option to play into a roach attack, because that is also very possible. So as 2 casts on the natural coming down, SCV is going to move into the natural as well. Finland Nest will start from Serral in the front of the Nat. As he says, hey, let's get ourselves up into that tech. Let's get something that can obviously fight later on in this game. That is going to be the Banelings. Drones will continue through. A few Lings and a couple Queens on the way. Those things are just going to go out there nibbling down that set of rocks. So rocks taking some damage as well with the Banshee of uThermal making its way through the center. Going to go for a patrol here in the middle of the map. There's a couple of racks coming through. Our orbital is going to be heading down to the 3rd in a moment. That Marine, both these Marines just going to chase down the final Overlord, so Overlord will go down as our stim pack starts from uThermal. These Queens are going to make their way again to the center of the map and just keep pushing the creep. At this stage, I mean, you look at what everything's been done. You know, Lair's about to be done seeking with Bane Speed right away. Then we're going to have the follow-up and the potential to go into those Evo chambers and upgrades. uThermal's already got his own upgrades and stim coming out, and his third CC in location, so it looks like a pretty just honest TVZ. The next question we're really going to be asking ourselves is, how does uThermal want to kind of play the mid-game? And what composition does Serral want to try and play here too? Does uThermal want to play very aggressively? Does he want to push and push and push? Is he going to try and 8 racks here? And from Serral's point of view, you know, also you can ask, is he going to play tanks or mines later into the game? And then Serral, composition-wise, Lingbane, obviously, but what supports that Lingbane? Is it pure Lingbane? Is it a faster Hive? Is it trying to get to Ultras? Is it, you know, into Lurkers eventually? Is it Lingbane Hydra? It's definitely not seeming like it's going to be Lingbane Muta. That Spire should have started up a while ago with the timing of the Lair, etc. So, it just feels like for the moment it's going to be pure Lingbane initially, as Serral's now double expanding, taking one base on the 3 o'clock, one base on the 6 o'clock. And that means if uThermal is able to deny one, Serral will have access to the other. And of course, you don't really need to mine from all these bases right now as Serral, but they also act as a way for you to, you know, have lava. And they act as a production structure. Marines and the medevacs move down. The Ling's trying to move into the third, but will be turned away. Hellions left there. Obviously good defense against run-bys. So do you get a couple tumors? It's a uThermal initial success story, but otherwise, that creep has gone without really being pushed back in the slightest. Has not really been able to do anything about it, so Serral is taking pretty good map control across the board. Another few Banelings just going to morph in. These Marines move down the bottom. I feel the Ling's going down, the Bane's going to roll forward as well, and we're just going to get those Marines lifting back up into medevacs. Overseer Serral flies through and a missile turret. Fires away, putting some good damage out onto the Overseer. The Overseer taking some hits. These few Marines come through, making sure the Overseer cannot stay in range. There goes the group spread out to the side. So group spread pushing out. And 2-2 upgrades on both sides of the map starting at about the same time. That's the answer to one of our questions in this game. The answer to both our questions, really, that I stated earlier. As this drop gets in, and actually will do pretty well. The answer is going to be Infestation Pits. We're going to go up to Hive here as Serral. Looks like he just wants to go kind of Lingbane Ultra. And from uThermal, we are going to be seeing that 8 rack. So he's going to push and keep on pushing. And damage like this, getting a few drones early, definitely puts him into a better spot for that. As Serral currently has some money in the bank, does have some lava to spend. He's also got the Hive to start up. Now, the way this typically is going to work is that the moment that uThermal is up against... Oh, it is going to be a Hydra Den. Excuse me. So we are going to move into Hydra Lurker eventually. Same idea as what I was going to say. I was going to talk about when Ultras get on the map, how this attack from uThermal starts to really get cleaned up, but the same idea with Lurkers, just I think it probably takes you longer to get there. You get a few Lurkers on the map, uThermal's army is not really going to be set up to deal with that at all. So that's what Serral is aiming for, being able to get to a position here where he can cause uThermal to say, oh no, I gotta turn around, I gotta back it up, I gotta change my plan. And from that point, Serral should just be an advantage because uThermal will have had a later 4th base than what he usually would have had, and so on and so forth. Of course, the first push from uThermal is still going to be pretty scary as Marine Tank comes walking down to the bottom side of the map. It's going through, a lot of these creep team is starting to go down, so a good amount of creep being cleaned out already. Serral going to get supply rock there. There's a few Lings being picked away at. Overlord's taking some damage. And Bane does get a little wrap around on those few Marines. As the rest of our Marines from uThermal pulling back over to the left. That Lingbane army going to settle down on the left-hand side as we do have the Lurker Den building in the main. Some nice tank fire, just catching these Banes, which are trying to come around the other way. uThermal maxed out, and Serral is not. Also, Serral fighting here just a few moments before 2-2 is ready. I'm going to say that that's probably not so great, as tank fire on the Banelings is once again putting in work. Serral's down almost 40 army supply here, as this push of uThermal has continued. And it just feels like Serral is not quite there and ready to deal with this properly. Like I say, it's going to take a while to make that Hydra Den, Lurker Den really come into action. And right now, can he afford the money to actually put some Lurkers on the map? Not really, because you got to build Hydras, then you've got to build Lurkers. It takes a while. Serral's going to give it the bottom left base already, and we'll just put his drones to the right side. So at least he's not going to waste anything trying to protect the bottom of this position. uThermal, by the way, does start 3-3, despite still only being on 3 bases. He will not start his 4th just yet, as Queens are going to try and fight and hold this off. Massive counterattack from Serral going across the map. Let's just watch a couple of Queens die. And let's see what these Lings can perhaps do. They're going to check the left side. No 4th base there. This is fully on 3 bases. And Serral is in some trouble as uThermal out on the map and looking really good at the moment. As these Lings unable to get through for much damage at all. SCV's pulled. There's Marines here. There's a tank there. Serral will get some Lurkers up though. And like I was saying, Lurkers are the one thing that will start to turn this game around a bit. Not just Lurkers. Lurkers are also going to have the upgrade as well. So you got Seismic Spines too. So a lot of the tech that's been holding Serral back because he's been investing into it is now starting to come onto the map. Question is it too far gone? Has already too much been spent in trying to hold on for this long? As 2 Lurkers go down instantly. If your Bane's at least connecting at the end there. The Liberator is so annoying right now. There's just not a proper set of anti-air. It's only like 1 Liberator as well. It's not even like there's a whole bunch of Libs. Just that 1 Lib causing issues. Serral's still moving around with the Ling Bane on the top. He has kept a lot of uThermal's units at home. It might be time to just try and bust down this specific army. Tanks are on siege. That might have been the moment, but not just yet. As Hydras kind of wander forward, not holding position there, and Serral giving up even a few more units. Now uThermal reinforced, and Serral can maybe just jump on these, as he is trying to jump on this army at the same time, so now he's a bit disjointed. And I don't mind him cleaning up the reinforcements, but obviously now he's trying to fight 2 armies at the same time, and each of his armies is just smaller. Liberator going to siege up again. That has been a pain in the booty. I think this is a new one now compared to before, but again, it's just been, like I say, it's not like 6 Libs all siege up and you're like, oh crap, my Hydras can't get on top of them. It's been 1 Lib at a time that's found so much damage. Serral is going to get out of this game, and uThermal is going to take the first map of this best. Dive into game number 2, as we've got in the top right corner. Down a game, we don't say that all too often. This is going to be Serral. As in the bottom left, our blue Terran player is Team Liquid's uThermal. Map 2 of this best of 3 as we get this started. So where did it go wrong for Serral? I think those drops of uThermal did pretty well. And obviously one thing that Serral didn't really get to do so much in this game was any counterattacks. He never slowed down uThermal too much. And I think some of the initial fights as well for Serral were not at the right time. And I just think it's difficult to get to those Lurkers. At the end of the day, the main thing is he was building Hive, a Hydra Den, into a Lurker Den. And that's all while uThermal is putting pretty much everything into this one push right then and there to come across the map and go for a killing blow. And again, if Serral can just hold off well enough and the Lurkers get up, in theory, those Lurkers should have a very good time. But when the Lurkers are like the only thing left standing, when Serral gets to that stage, that's when you're going to have a problem. That is when you're going to have a problem for sure. And that was the problem that we saw arise as well. So yeah, it was a bit of a tough one, to be honest with you guys. I think definitely not the easiest of days right now for Serral, as finally comes up against some opposition. He's been kind of sailing through these games so far, right? So it's kind of nice to see him at least having a little bit of a tougher time, because it has been a, like I say, obviously against Seoul he didn't have too much trouble at all. Hey, thank you so much. John Brown 1900 dropping the 3 months in advance sub. Welcome to the stream, and thank you so much for subscribing in advance. I really appreciate it. That discount still going on? Must be, right? Discount for subscribing months in advance. I honestly, I have no idea how long that's lasting for or anything, but I appreciate the advance sub. It's really one of the best things we can read. Appreciate it. Thanks so much for supporting. Alright, let's see this Reaper and what it can do. Obviously, so far, not the craziest run of luck. Put some damage on Lings, right? I mean, it's kind of what it's meant to do. Serral's not really meant to lose anything here, and especially on Oxide. Tell you what, that's a pretty far back creep tumor for Oxide, though. You know, on Oxide, with this ramp up into the into the natural, you should be able to get a creep tumor, like, outright here, really. So kind of shocked to see that that is not the case. Very shocked, in fact, to see that that is not the case. Did you see a racks will be placed in the main? So we're going to go 2 racks on the follow-up of the 3cc. At the end of the day, the creep tumor isn't a big deal. It's just one of those things where it could have been that little bit further forward already. It might just be that he didn't want them to go further forward than this anyway, because then he's worried about the second creep tumor getting picked off. So you could maybe argue there's something to think about there as well. As the Reaper and 2 Hellions are going to make their way around to the top side. A drone going to go mining into the 3rd hatch. Is obviously just getting running at this stage. Another fairly peaceful opening where it's really just going to be the typical Reaper Hellion versus pretty typical kind of setup toward Ling Bane. Of course, you can see right now we have got the drone count rise and the Bane nest on the way in. Because a few of those Lings just going to be hitting up onto those rocks, so rocks taking some damage as well. Oh, and look at this for uThermal. I like this switch up, actually. So, usually this build builds only 2 Hellions, and then you just obviously go like full on into Marines, into that double medevac drop. Oh, that's not good for uThermal. What a catch for Serral. He doesn't realize how important that is yet. Right now he's thinking, oh, that's nice. I just got rid of his map control. The uThermal wants to go for a uThermal wants to go for like a Hellbat follow-up. So this is something we used to see with the typical 2-on-1. This is what we used to see with the typical 2-on-1. And in that kind of old kind of 2-on-1 scenario, sometimes you just didn't build a double medevac, you built these Hellions instead. And it's essentially a bit more of an all-in kind of push. And it's meant to catch the Zerg off because they're like, oh, 2-on-1, I know how to deal with this. And they play a bit greedy because they want to defend it, being as greedy as possible to get into the best possible position. So uThermal is essentially doing this off of the 3cc, but obviously you lose 2 Hellions, which is 2 Hellbats down the drain already. And that hurts. He is going to start cancelling Banelings, though. 4 of the 7 morphing in get cancelled before they're done. Now there's only 3 Banelings ready to go, and they crash into a single Hellbat. Serral is in some trouble still. No medevac, though, so there's no healing on these Marines, and that means that Serral will eventually, with the Queens, push this back. Just going to be seeing those Queens coming through for a couple of shots, helping to handle that. Well, that's a defense in the end from Serral, but God, was that close. He was very narrowly in a lot of trouble right there. That was a little terrifying, to be honest. That was a little terrifying, as we have got the Marines and the Hellbats will join up just outside of that 3rd base, and uThermal will get ready for the next step. So the problem for uThermal here is now you don't get any creep clear that you usually get, because usually you'd have 2 medevacs full of Marines that you would usually go and clear creep with. That doesn't happen now, so that's a problem. So that's already something you got to consider. And outside of that, I'd say outside of that as well, I mean, just the Hellion investment is kind of expensive, right? There's a lot of minerals that don't really usually match up with this build, so that Marine count was a lot lower. I just feel like following on from here, everything's going to be that little bit out of sync at the moment, so doesn't seem to be looking great right now for our Team Liquid Terran in Game 2, but let's see what he goes for. He's already added on a second factory and playing Widow Mines, so very different style to the last game, where obviously A, it was siege tanks, and B, there was never a 4th base brought into play. As Marines stem through, a couple of these creep tumors already going down. Our Banes looking as though they wanted to maybe come in towards this Marine Hellbat force. Ling Bane army kind of thinking about coming through there. Widowmine is going to sit in the center as we do have our 1-1 upgrades of uThermal in the main base setting up. So uThermal will hang around to the left, making his way around there. Trying to get a little bit of something done. Meanwhile, Serral just goes into that Infestation Pit Hydra Den combo, so looking for the movement in towards the Lurkers here eventually as well. I think he has the creep spread, the control of the game, to really do that very safely in comparison to before. If we're going to compare it to map number 1, which I think obviously we would have to do. He's in a much better position to do it, so looks like Serral will probably get up to Lurkers, in which case, if Serral gets there easily, successfully, then as uThermal, you're basically looking at a situation where you have to start saying, right, how am I going to fight against Lurkers? Is there a way you can just push and win? Probably not. I mean, Drilling Claws on the way. What Drilling Claws does is Serral does split away from that Widow Mine. What Drilling Claws does is obviously you're committing to Widow Mines, and that means you're not going to have quite the same kind of like gold power that you will with Siege Tanks. So the mines are a bit better against the Ling Bane in general, I'd say, but they're not as good against the Lurkers. So it'll be interesting to see if uThermal does switch into tank production. Right now he's building some Thors. He's got 1 Thor out, a 2nd Thor building, so he wants to get that Thor count running. And seeing what he can do with that, perhaps, as the Medivacs hang out to the right-hand side. The Lurk Den is about to finish up in the main base. And this command center will move to a 4th in the next few moments. Command center lands, Planetary Fortress will start to morph. And Seismic Spines is coming through on the Lurker Den as well. So again, that up and running as Marines push through. A couple of creep teamers going down. Widow Mines are going to burrow up. Just going to load back into those Medivacs. Couple of Banes crashing in wherever possible. Medivacs now boosting around on the right side. Just going to scan on down to the bottom here as well. A little bit of army just going to push up to the top left. So just going to go for that hatchery as Ling Bane wants to run in for this. You see the Lings are taking some shots. The Bane's coming through too. Thor's going to lift up, and those Marines are going to be able to load into the Medivacs. Nicely handled as another command center settles down on the left. +2 melee, adrenal glands, +1 missiles. All of that's on the way up right now. Gonna drop in a parasitic bomb. It's gonna cause that Medivac to pop just there. So that Medivac will go down. And just gonna be seeing our Lurkers are gonna burrow up too. So gonna burrow these and go in towards the Planetary Fortress. As mentioned, you know, uThermal doesn't really have... He's building tanks now, and I think that really is just a response to the Lurkers. You need them, because in a game like this one, especially when you're not on like the forefront of, you know, aggression, you're not the one that's really pressuring, you need to hold positions, and to do that, you just need siege tanks, and that's exactly what uThermal's moved into, so... The bad side of that is, well, I was about to talk about how the Widow Mines were then still an investment that he's made that maybe didn't pay off, but then that Widow Mine connects. I was target firing as well. Target fires onto the backside of the units, so Serral is unable to see where to split away to. And that just catches a good little chunk of units there, gives uThermal a bit of a fighting chance. There's a Banes and Lurkers. Join out toward the center here. A few more units are going to rally back over to the left, and this base... It's got a couple tanks on it, but that's really about it. With Blinding Cloud, it's going to get the Lurkers in position. There's one more tank in the back. That gets Blinding Clouded too. Everything's going to just siege up on top of this base, and the Banes know what their target's going to be. It was going to be the SCVs, but then they decided to turn around and just go for the Planetary Fortress instead, which in the moment I was a little shocked about, but I guess that's something that works too. Here come these Medivacs now, just going to fly up the right-hand side. They're going to start unloading on the 3 o'clock and just try and deny a couple of units over there. As the Lurkers and burrow, one Lurker re-burrowing, and just going to be seeing a lot of those drones going down. The Lings are going to try and run into this. Marines are going to do pretty well at picking away at them, and I mean, the drop was decent. In fairness, just Serral is able to just pull everything across again. Creep spread across the map. Because uThermal is still busy dealing with this, Serral just says, well, I'm backing away from essentially my own attack to come and defend. So it doesn't really hurt Serral that much. It's not like he's exposed elsewhere, because uThermal is still cleaning up the tail end of this. Lurker that's left behind, the Lurker that was behind the mineral line. Serral is going to lose this bottom right attempt. Of course, at this stage of the game, he has every base on the map, which he is meant to have. So he is essentially trying to take bases of uThermal away from him, so that at the end game, the efficiency, just make sure uThermal has the least possible resource he can to work against this. Serral's going to go pushing through. There's a lot of tanks there, and he's getting on top of tanks do well. A couple of Lurkers are probably just going to remain burrowed to put some further damage out. Top side, uThermal pushes around, and again, Serral has to back it up a second. As uThermal, got to give credit to the fact he's doing a decent job of just staying in the game, right? He's surviving these engagements, and he is trading well. And eventually, your goal here is if you keep trading like that, you just slowly expand. You can expand much slower than Serral, but if you can, expand soon enough to survive and to keep your bank rebuilt and to keep army rebuilt, if you can do that and eventually you take these bases, that is where you can win this game out. Of course, Oxide, one of the reasons it's good for Terran later game 2 is just the fact that it's got less bases. It's only a 6-base map for each player. So 12 bases in total. And so generally that means the Zerg is going to run out of money much sooner than they usually would. This is a great catch from Serral though, and that's going to be a chunk of uThermal's army getting shut down there. In fact, that's just enough to end the game because uThermal doesn't have a bank ready to rebuild. That was a move that was just a little bit too costly. Probably needed the 5th base established behind this. Return a game 3 of Serral uThermal. Fun series this has turned out to be, actually. Finally, some games that last more than 5 minutes as well. Also an added bonus is in the top left, our red Zerg from Ants. Let's give it up and let's get some hype up in here if you guys are cheering on Serral. Taking on the blue Terran in the bottom right-hand corner from Team Liquid. You guys know it's uThermal. As we get this ready to rumble. Round 3. Ding, ding, ding. You may fight. Obviously, you get to go on Romanticide, and this is a bit of a larger map. I mean, we're just talking about, 12 bases in total on this map. On Oxide, sorry. And then you talk about this map, which is 8 bases each. 16 bases is a pretty sizable difference, and that's why this one's definitely got to play it out a little bit longer. It definitely has a pretty cool left versus right mechanic to it, but in general, it's going to be tough to end games on this map. The one time we see Terrans doing very well on the Romanticide is when they get progress through the center, and when early game they do well enough to keep these rocks alive, and then they get set up like through the center of the map, and they really look to like hammer on home a point through here. They eventually break through, they take this forward base, and that's generally the Zerg's 4th, and that generally means that this location is broken, and that's when the Terran can win through the center. Now, it don't have to win like that. You can also play a much longer game on Romanticide. It just really does seem to be the options of you either play a longer game on Romanticide, or you push through the middle of the map, and that's your direction to win it. Is this best of 5 or best of 7? Best of 3? All of these matches are best of 3 today, including qualifying matches, which is what we get into after this match. The winner of this series is going to play a best of 3 qualifying round. That comes up next as this Reaper moves into the natural. And these few Zerglings going to try and, of course, survive and push the Reaper back. And all the usual early game TVZ dancing moves that we see between the two. Once again, 3 CCs, so uThermal pretty consistent with his want to expand quickly. This time, this backwards creep tumor helps out because the Reaper was not able to get a kill where it did want to. So that's one of the scenarios compared to Oxide where Serral put the creep tumor back as well. But Oxide has that ramp to stop you going up it. Obviously, in this case, the Reaper has not got a ramp to go up to hit the creep tumor. So if it was at the front, that creep tumor might have gone down. Link speed and the Overlord speed. Building in the upper left. A Marine popping. And it's just going to stay patrolling on the sides. A couple of mules dropping down on the natural expansion. And let's move into the center. Zerglin's speed's about to finish up. The Overlord speed is going to be completing. As those couple of queens going to sit in the front and just hanging around. Just looking to defend. Obviously, this forward base allows you to essentially say to the Hellions, well, you either deny my creep coming out the front, or you go for the very long run around up here and try and deny this creep tumor, which, I mean, this Overlord is positioned to see exactly this move. To see those Hellions rotating around to the other direction. So the queens are here in plenty of time. You're not going to try and advance that creep tumor forward while the Hellions are there if the queens aren't there. And that's the power of Romanticide early game for Zerg, is just that it's so difficult for the Hellions to really be successful in any way. You know, it takes a lot. You're not going to see Banshee play from uThermal, so switching it up from game to game, one of the things that uThermal is very good at is having a good variety of builds to pick out from. And that really obviously makes each game its own. It makes each game kind of independent. That then gets very exciting as well, as you're just going to be having. Let's do Hellions and a Reaper. Move around the center. Now we do have the Overlord hanging out on the natural. Just obviously Serral investing into that Overlord speed. So he gets full information this game. He gets to see the Banshee on the way. And he should not be caught off guard by it. He was caught off guard by the Cloaked Banshee of Soul in the earlier series today. But I feel like that's one of those mistakes that Serral makes one time in a day. And unfortunately for uThermal, only one time. As the Lings are going to pull back over here and gonna go jumping onto those rocks. So Rock's gonna take a bit of a beating as well. Extractor starts up on the left hand side. These Hellions and the Reaper gonna pick away at the hatchery. Spore Crawler will finish up, and again the Evolution Chamber's coming down. So Serral pretty much always going for this faster lair into Evos. However, this time faster lair, but nothing with it. Which is kind of weird, right? There's no Baneling Nest down, so there's no Baneling speed start, and that's typically what happens. You typically go for that Bane Nest a bit earlier, but I guess this time he saw maybe the Banshee, and so he said, I actually don't need the Baneling Nest just yet, so I'm going to prioritize those upgrades. Then add the Bane Nest a little further down the line. Because, I mean, against the Banshee setup, you're not as immediate threat against like a 2-1-1 follow-up from 3CC, so you don't need the Banes as quickly. There's the Bane Nest now. Still, I mean, it feels kind of late, because now you're talking about Bane speed at what, like 8.5 minutes in the game or so? That's a pretty late Baneling speed. As where are those Banshees? Where did they just find a bunch of kills? Right over here. 4 drones go down. So uThermal does find an entry point to deal damage with those Banshees. That's fantastic. Drones always go... drones always go a long way. If you're going to kill anything, kill drones. I believe that's how it goes. And I'm just intrigued to see if uThermal can do something well before Bane speed. The thing is, typically you are looking at having one of two things, usually. You're either looking at having the Baneling speed available, or you're looking at having the melee upgrades available. As our Marines, Hellions, and a Siege Tank going to pick their way through this set of rocks. uThermal looking to open up. I don't even know what this opens up. I mean, this is such a narrow choke, it doesn't even really give you a good push point. I guess it gives you somewhere to fall back to while you clean up some of this creep, so it kind of works. That's a pretty cool way of looking at it, actually. You can see that Overlord goes down, that creep tumor goes down. uThermal's going to pull back to the left-hand side where he's got another creep tumor and probably another Overlord to get rid of here. Serral's just not going to take the bait. He's not going to fight anytime soon. He doesn't need, unless he's forced to fight, he's not going to fight because he doesn't have that Baneling speed for a little while longer. There's no reason for him to try and, you know, pick off this army. And his army's just going to be quite literally better in a few moments' time, as that was a Bane drop coming in for 7 SCVs. Apologies, a little slow to hop over to it, but 7 workers going down to the Overlord. I just thought I was a scouting over on the minimap, to be honest with you. For once I actually saw ahead of time what was happening. I just didn't think to click on it because I genuinely just thought that was a scouting Overlord. So That's my bad. Ling's on the right, looking for a big run by. I mean, this is a wall off up here, so you're going to need some Banes if you want to commit to that. Run by or flank onto this position. You kind of get the choice, don't you? Or maybe even just looking to shut down reinforcements, but units are kind of making their way through that kind of central area. As we just look to add up. Barracks 6, 7, 8 are finishing. And we're 8 racks in here on Amanda's side. He does burst through those depots. He is going to get in for reinforcements. We know that that's a big deal, so he's going to get a couple of reinforcements already. Now SCVs will start dropping as Serral. Let's see what he can do, because as 12 workers go down, this is still a lot of Zerglings as well, so you would generally want to keep some of these alive, and he does slip some away, and I think that's very important not to lose all of this. Because losing all of these Zerglings, I think, puts you into a very dangerous position on the army count, a position that you can absolutely fall apart in, so Serral at the same time tries to take advantage of his ability to multitask and tries to push some of the Marines back. And Queens get forced away as well. And back up to the left. As our hive comes through from Serral, and that's just going to continue in the main base also. The hive in the main, here comes the Lings on the right side, just going to have to back it up once more. Overlord is going to get shot down, so hopefully falls already, and just going to see the rest of the Zerglings again making their way to the far right. So collecting all of that together here is uThermal on the left-hand side. Marine tank is going to press forward a little bit once more. Hive coming through. Ling Bane wants to go and jump on those Marines. Probably too many reinforcements here to do too much more with. The Banes will never get out of there alive, so he's just going to let them roll through and do what they can. Thing is, uThermal kind of feels halted. You know, Serral has kept the aggression up, so uThermal hasn't made any progress, and Serral is coming into 2-2. I mean, uThermal is also about to hit 2-2 still, but Serral will have 2-2 along with it. And he's just still got just a massive Ling Bane. He's got that hive about to complete, so he will have a backup plan as well on how to continue. I imagine just a Viper or two to make some of these siege tank clearouts a little easier, just in case this game continues to be an extremely slow push from uThermal. Then the Vipers will start to give you some efficiency, which should put uThermal under pressure to give you a chance to maybe force him to make some mistakes. So Ling Bane going to come up this ramp on the bottom side, and it's going to make this a complete wraparound, actually. Some Banes darting in from the right side, too. The tank fire is pretty good, and up the ramp, some units will survive this, but too much loss from uThermal, and his supply is dipping heavily from what it once was. Ending up a long way off what it once used to be. Queen split up. Ling Bane going to move around the left side. We've got a Marine tank medevac on the center. The Ling Bane going to go around the bottom as well. Here come the Marines stimming through the middle. Going to get rid of a whole bunch of these creep tumors. And the Ling Bane just going to be running for the depots as our army heroes. uThermal still sitting around. Banes are going to go crashing on through as we expected. And of course, continue to run on forwards after those Marines, after those SCVs. 7 workers do fall. So 7 workers end up falling here. Continued push from uThermal. Once again, heading out toward that upper left-hand side. He's just been forced to turn around too many times. I think he's just lost too much along the way. Now he's really not got splash damage either. A single siege tank falls, and this is just pure Marines against Ling Bane. Marine split challenge, insane mode. As uThermal will do his very best, and I mean his split is some of the very best out there as well. He is very much so considered a micro player, also a macro player, even though his macro is very good too. And he actually does survive with units after all of that. I know it's off creep and all, but it's still kind of wild to see. Unfortunately, of course, his economy is just nowhere in comparison to Serral, who has also got the tech. With Ultras taken to the stage against essentially pure Marine, we are on a timer until Serral is through to the qualifying match. Ling Bane Queen gonna kill him back to the middle. And that tank is siege. This medevac going to load up and move to the right side. A couple of Liberators are on the way in, so they're going to be finishing up soon as well. Four more Ultras continuing out as uThermal will continue to press the front lines. Tank going to siege up. Liberators getting settled down. And And a few of these creep teamers already dropping off as well. uThermal going to type GG without a fight. He kind of knows that Serral has ultras, and that's probably going to be it. Good fight from uThermal, good attempt, but Serral just has a bit too much, and he